Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily podcast. Now, did you know that last year, 69% of organisations admitted to experiencing a cyber attack via an exploit of an unknown or unmanaged internet-facing asset, such as a web server, VPN gateway, firewall, etc. Now, the thing is, all these assets are all accessible through the internet, so essentially anyone can get to them, and the attacks are growing easier and much more frequent. But organisations, for the most part, often overlook these vulnerabilities or don't know how they even exist, which essentially puts their businesses at risk of major disruption. So, securing these vulnerabilities could save businesses huge amounts of time and money. So, the message is clear. Stop ignoring your internet-facing assets. Your business is counting on it. So today, I've invited my friend JP, the CTO at Onapsis, to dive into some of those most common threats in this area and also learn more about why organisations should actually be more worried about these unknown internet-facing vulnerabilities and also explore how they can prevent them. But before we start today's interview, I just wanted to give a quick mention to our sponsors, because this month the podcast is brought to you by Flipper, which is the #1 marketplace to buy and sell online businesses and startups. So, do you run your own online business? And have you ever considered selling your website, your store, your tech, or your app? Because with world-class combined matching technology, dedicated brokers and end-to-end services, all at the most efficient price, Flipper is making it simple to sell your online business. So, to get a free valuation, visit my friends at flipper.com/techtalks, where each month thousands of online business owners exit with Flipper. Again, visit flipper.com/techtalks. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to Boston, Massachusetts, where JP is waiting to join us once again and share his valuable insights. So a massive warm welcome back to the show. For anyone that missed our last chat, which I think was about 2 years ago, can you just remind everyone listening with a little about who you are and what you do?
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I'm happy to be on the show again. On this side, JP, CTO and one of the founders of Onapsis. Onapsis is a company that is focused on cybersecurity for ERP applications. Those are large applications that most companies use to support their business. I've been working with IT security for my entire career and over the past more than 10 years, very, very focused on these large applications, on understanding how to secure SAP and Oracle applications and how to work with organizations to really help them go through that security process, also reporting vulnerabilities to SAP and Oracle, doing a little bit of everything on the field of cybersecurity for business applications.
And I'm glad you mentioned SAP there, because one of the reasons I was excited to get you back on the podcast was after reading how Onapsis Research Labs is actually one of the most prolific contributors of vulnerability research by the SAP Product Security Response Team. So can you expand on that and some of the work that you do there?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not just SAP, it's also SAP and Oracle. And very recently, we crossed the milestone of 1,000 zero days reported to SAP and Oracle. And that's because of the continuous work that the Onapsis Research Labs is doing around identifying risk on business applications. So we have an extensive team of researchers that they do nothing more than analyzing business applications, working with organizations to identify these vulnerabilities and working with the vendors to report and fix these risks. You may have heard in the past of high-profile vulnerabilities like ICMAD or Recon or other vulnerabilities that are very critical and have been exposing multiple organizations with a high level of criticality. But those are just a handful of the hundreds, now more than 1,000 of vulnerabilities that we have been reporting that come out of the research projects, very focused research projects that we put together and we work for months, but also of projects that we do, for example, penetration tests, right? We work with organizations, and through that work, we also identify zero-day vulnerabilities that we report to the vendors. So lots of different sources that eventually come up with CVEs and we report to SAP and Oracle. And the good thing is that in the end, all of us are we are helping everyone, right? Because all SAP and Oracle customers benefit from the great research that the Onapsis Research Labs is doing. Eventually, they apply the patches, they change the configurations, and they have more secure systems. It's not just something that we do for our customers, right? Of course, our customers also benefit from this, but this is helping everyone. And that's why I think it's a great synergy between Onapsis Research Labs and SAP and Oracle and other vendors as well, because everyone benefits from the great expertise and research that we continuously do.
And last year, I was also reading that 69% of organizations admitted to experiencing a cyber attack via an exploit of an unknown or unmanaged internet-facing asset, such as web servers, VPN gateways, and firewalls, etc. But I'm curious, what did you take away from a big stat like that?
Yeah, it's shocking, right? 69% of organizations admitting experiencing a cyber attack like that, especially of internet-facing applications. When you think about, hey, what's at highest risk in your organization? When you prioritize risk, when you prioritize vulnerability management and investing in security, well, some of the most at-risk assets are the ones that are internet-facing, because of those assets are reachable by anyone from anywhere. There is continuous automation, continuously updated to target and automatically exploit the latest vulnerabilities. So it's a continuous flow of exploitation that these assets receive. So not just script kiddies doing their research, we are talking about financially motivated threat actors as well as the ones that have other type of motivations and even highest resources. So everyone is targeting those internet-facing systems. So really hearing about this type of attacks is or this type of stats is really shocking, because you would think that, hey, everything that is internet-facing is typically at a highest priority for organizations, and it should be. So even when those systems are internet-facing and have highest priority from organizations, it's still being targeted and it's still subject to exploitation and compromise. So I would say organizations need to continuously do more, especially on that area. But even if in that area it's not enough, what's left for the rest of the organization, right? Like organizations have thousands and thousands of assets, digital assets that are at different levels of exposure. So it's important to prioritize properly and to invest in security. Continue to invest in security, because this is not going to reduce. It's not going to improve anytime sooner. It's threat actors know that they can monetize on poor security, so they do. And we see that in ransomware, we see that in data breaches, we see that continuously. So it's important for organizations to up their game and continuously invest in security and continuously improve their cybersecurity posture.
So presumably, when organizations overlook these vulnerabilities, or even worse still, don't even know they exist, they'll just end up putting their business at risk of major disruption, which could, of course, be completely avoided. So can you expand on that and just the scale of what could happen when they don't do that? Absolutely.
And we are very used to that. We coming from this field of cybersecurity, that is security of business critical applications, that has been historically overlooked by organizations. It's been a black box. It's been a gap between IT security and the IT teams, and really no one being responsible for it, but IT security ultimately being responsible for the security of the overall organization. It's something that really resonates, and we have seen organizations going through that, understanding, hey, there is an area of risk we haven't been paying attention to, but it's picking up in terms of the criticality, because threat actors are investing on it and are automating exploitation and are creating exploits to be able to target these applications even before exploits become publicly available. So it's important to understand risk and prioritize risk properly, but these type of gaps are typically very critical, because those are the gaps that also ultimately threat actors use. A very recent example is called Elephant Beetle, a research done by another company that analyzed different incidents. It's called Signia, and they analyzed different incidents and in different organizations that they were brought to as an incident response firm, and they identified that this threat actor was using specifically SAP vulnerabilities to compromise systems and laying low in the radar, and ultimately generating financial fraud for millions of dollars. So that's what could happen if you don't properly address security gaps and you maintain a robust vulnerability management program and a robust security program that incorporates all of the assets in your organization, properly prioritizing based on business risk, probability of exploitation, and other areas that you could incorporate to do the proper prioritization.
And I suspect we'll have a few business leaders shifting uncomfortably in their chair as they're listening to our conversation today. So the big question has to be, what should businesses, or where should businesses begin to secure these vulnerabilities? And also, what is the ROI of this approach? Because I think traditionally people have thought, well, why do we need to spend so much money on something that might happen and might not happen? I'm kind of hopeful that message is changing, but what should they, or where should they begin?
That's a great question, and it begins with really bringing security at the forefront of the conversations and not as an afterthought. If you bring security as an afterthought, it is too late, it's too expensive, it's too disruptive. Bringing security as a beginning of the conversations, and in this case, for example, we are talking with a lot of organizations going through digital transformation processes, cloud migration processes, and bringing security at the beginning of the project. It's not only more cost efficient, but it's also becomes an accelerator. So you get the best of all worlds when you bring security, because it helps you, it's less costly, there's better ROI, and that means really treating risk as a risk management process, right? Talking about vulnerabilities, not just talking about CVEs, or it's talking about risk overall. We discuss how to secure vulnerabilities that have a CVE. We discuss how to secure critical configurations, how to secure the interfaces, how to secure custom code. All of that ultimately becomes risk. So bringing that discussion at the beginning is the best way to go about it, and it's most efficient as well from a cost perspective. It will get you in a way better place. This is what everyone speaks about as a shift left, right? Let's bring security at the development side of the house, really preventing those vulnerabilities to be introduced in the first place. It's exactly that, right? It doesn't matter if you're developing an application or deploying a new technology, it's really bring security at the table at the very beginning of that project that will give you the best results.
And I'm curious, in your experience, is this message being embraced by boardrooms right now?
Absolutely, yeah. So we see more and more boards demanding to understand how they are in terms of cybersecurity, at a general level, but also more specifically as well. Boards are they hear the news, right? They see breaches, they see organizations struggling with cybersecurity, and no one wants to be the next one, right? The next one in the news. So we definitely see boardrooms demanding more updates in terms of security maturity and what organizations are doing to prevent becoming the next one.
And I think I should highlight that Onapsis actually provides cybersecurity solutions to, I think it's something like 20% of Fortune 100 companies around the world, and has also increased growth of something like 187% over the past 3 years. So bearing all that in mind, I'm curious, are there any themes or trends and the kind of conversations that you're having with your customers? I suspect there might be a few, right?
Absolutely, and I briefly touch base on some of those, but definitely cloud transformation, digital transformation, those milestones that bring organizations into having to invest in new technology, into modernizing their existing business processes. A lot of those milestones are perfect segues to bring security, as I mentioned before, sooner rather than later, making this security an enabler and not a blocker. So, as I mentioned, cloud, digital transformation, the latest technologies, these vendors, SAP, Oracle, are pushing a lot of new technologies because they are themselves providing great innovations, right? And we can talk about a few of those, like S4HANA, like cloud, like Fiori applications, like Oracle Cloud as well. So all of those organizations are starting to embrace, but what happens when with regards to security, right? And that's when we come on board and we start having those conversations and we start educating customers on shifting left, on bringing security first and not as an afterthought. And that's really resonated very well over the past couple of years, and that's been a trigger of a lot of our growth as well.
What I also find fascinating here is many of these customers that we're talking about, and 20% of the Fortune 100 companies, they're coming to you and asking you for help and solutions to their challenges. But I'm curious, what keeps you up at night, and how do you keep your curiosity and open-mindedness alive to deal with some of those issues?
Well, many things. I could start by saying that being a technology company, but more specifically being a cybersecurity company, it's always a learning process, right? It's not like other fields where you study, you learn, you become a professional, and that's it. This is like really a continuous learning process. This evolves continuously, and that's been pushing our organization and myself personally as well into continuously having to learn new technologies, new techniques, new vulnerabilities, new risks. Recently, I've had to work with one of our teams internally on implementing machine learning and being able to implement machine learning to detect cybersecurity risks. And that's been also forcing me to learn a lot of those things that, I knew before, but okay, how do we implement this? What are the technical details, and having to really go deep down into that. It happened to me as well in other areas, learning new languages, new developing languages, how to secure those languages, new technology from the vendors that I mentioned before, like SAP and Oracle. So being in cyber, but in this field specifically, you always have to be learning and pushing your teams to learn with you as well. And the first part of your question, I think it was what keeps you up at night.
Yeah.
I think basically, how do we keep up with threat actors, right? How do we keep up with the technology and the ways to secure organizations? Because in the end, when I think about it, we are working to secure some of the largest organizations in the world, but also that have an impact on all of us, right? Think about energy companies, think about retail organizations, food manufacturing companies. A lot of these organizations have a direct impact in our daily lives. So making sure that those operations remain secure is also something that definitely keeps me up at night in terms of how do we improve up our game and keep up with what threat actors are doing.
Love that. And if you were to look back at your career, what would you say are the biggest lessons that you've learned from your career in tech? Is there any standout messages you'd like to leave everyone listening with?
Yeah, definitely. I would say in my career in tech, but more specifically my career in cybersecurity, it's cybersecurity being such a special domain where you have a lot of egos and a lot of personalities. I think for me it was humbleness, right? From the get-go, it's really like you have to be humble. You're always eager to learn. You're always eager to learn a lot from different fields and to share that learning. But being humble is super important, because there's nothing like you don't win in this game if you're a lone wolf, if you're someone who works by himself. It's really a team game. It's a team sport here. Cybersecurity, being able to secure our customers. So it starts by being humble and being eager to learn, and share those learnings with everyone. Because as I said, it's not just something that you will do by working alone.
And of course, cybersecurity is an incredibly serious topic. And to end on a positive note, or maybe even a bit of a fun note, is there a funny or interesting story that has happened in your career that you could leave everyone with?
Yeah. So, and this one goes all the way to the beginnings of Onapsis. We started as a very small company, as a startup. As with most startups, we started in the working. It was I think five of us working in the bedroom of one of the founders. Literally, like very hot place, very uncomfortable. But it was the beginnings, right? We were very focused on doing what we need to do, and this was in the house of one of the founders in a historical area of Buenos Aires, where the houses were very old and there was a common section. So we had a neighbor that had a parrot, right? This parrot was particularly noisy and particularly chatty. So you can imagine when we wanted to have a call with a prospect or record a webinar, okay, we needed to ensure we had a checklist, right? Okay, microphone, internet working, laptop battery, and one of those checklist items was feed the parrot. So we actually had to go and throw some food to the parrot. It was kind of bribing him to make sure that he was busy for some time while we do what we had to do. Call it a prospect call, a call with the media, or a call with or a webinar or something like that. So I think that was at the very beginnings. Then we moved to offices and we changed offices. But that shows you that, hey, this is where we were coming from. We actually had to feed the parrot to be able to have a decent call or a decent webinar with a good recording.
What a great story. And as someone that records a daily tech podcast and has got, or thought I'd seen every single or every possible thing to put on a to-do list before you hit record, feed the parrot is not one that's been on there, but absolutely love that. And for anyone listening that would just like to dig a little bit deeper on any of the topics we discussed today, or find out more information about the work you do, or contact your team, what's the best starting point for everything?
Well, definitely start by the website. We have a great blog site that we continuously put technical blog posts. We put advisories there. You can also see us at some of the main conferences, Black Hat, DEF CON, Troopers, RSA. The research labs is continuously presenting on some of the latest vulnerabilities and threats. So I would say also Twitter and LinkedIn. We have a lot of presence, social presence, and also in our website. But yeah, look for the Onapsis Research Labs. And if you want to meet us in person, and if you happen to be at some of the IT security conferences out there, you will probably see us. Happy to have a conversation in person with any of you.
And I too hope to have one of those conversations in person with you at a future tech event. It's been an absolute pleasure getting you back on the podcast, diving into some of the most common threats in this area, why organizations should be worried about unknown internet-facing vulnerabilities, how they can prevent them, and also finishing on a light-hearted story. And from now on, JP, whenever I think about you, I will always think, feed the parrot. But more than anything, just thank you for sharing everything with me today. And I promise you we won't leave it 2 years till we speak again.
Thank you. Thank you all.
So as we said in the podcast there, Onapsis is a cybersecurity provider for business critical applications, and they're intent on getting organizations to secure more unknown vulnerabilities before the inevitable happens. So a big thank you to JP for delving into the most common threats in this area, talking about why organizations should be worried about these unknown internet-facing vulnerabilities and how they can prevent them. I'm going to put the microphone in front of you all listening now and ask you, what are you doing to better manage unknown internet-facing vulnerabilities? Has anything we discussed today resonated with you? Please share them all. Email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, Instagram @NeilCHughes, and my website is just techblogwriter.co.uk, where we've hit 2,200 interviews, which is just insane when I stop to think about that. But moving forward, just a big thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.